Blackwater, Montana Territory, summer of 1876. The town ripe with the smell of sweat, gun oil, and cheap whiskey. Dust hung in the air like a curse, choking the throats of miners, gamblers, and drifters who packed the crooked streets. On the rickety steps of a saloon called the Gilded Cage, a deal was about to be struck. Not for land or cattle or gold. This was the selling of a young woman. Myling, or My as she was sometimes called, stood stiff and still between her father and brother. She was 23, which her father said was already too old for any respectable man to want. Her traditional silk tunic was faded and patched, her hands rough with calluses, her figure too lean from hard work. To him, she was a failed investment. But her eyes, they were steady, defiant, daring anyone to tell her she was nothing. Her father spat into the dirt and wiped his mouth. She's no use to us. No proper man will have her. No dowry. She brings us nothing. One less mouth is a blessing. Her older brother, Wei, smirked. You'll get a good worker, long as you don't mind a sharp tongue. She's too proud for her own good. Across from them stood Gideon Finch, the saloon keeper, his red face slick with sweat and whiskey. He barked out a laugh, slapped his round belly, and pulled a pouch of coins from his coat. The bag clinked heavy in his hand. Don't mind a bit. I'll teach her what pride's worth. Here, more than she's worth, but I'm generous today. He turned his greasy smile toward my. Get in the wagon, girl. A rough hand seized her arm. She did not scream. She did not cry. She only looked at her father. In his eyes, she saw no regret, no hesitation, only relief. The crowd jeered and hooted. Miners, drunks, cow hands, looking for a bit of cruel fun. Lucky you, Gideon. Bet she'll fetch a fine price downriver. Foreign girls belong in saloons or graves. Mai's jaw clenched, her chest a storm of fury and shame. Yet she stood tall, refusing to let them see her break. Then a shadow stirred by the general store. A man stepped forward, moving slow but sure, like a mountain that had decided to walk. His canvas clothes were worn. A hunting knife rode his hip. A satchel of hide slung heavy on his shoulder. His beard was thick, his eyes hidden beneath the brim of a weather-stained hat. He said nothing at first, only walked through the crowd until he stood before Gideon Finch. The saloon keeper sneered. What do you want, Croft? The man set his satchel on the table. It fell with a solid thud. Tanned hides, tools, the labor of a long season. Finally, his voice came low and steady. If she's useless to you, then I'll take her. Not for drink serving, not for bearing sons. I'll build her a roof. If she wants, she can call it home. The crowd hushed. Even Gideon blinked. By sputtered like he'd swallowed glass. You can't just, Gideon began. I just did, Owen Croft said. He turned his gaze to Mai. His eyes, though shadowed, were not cruel, not hungry. They held something strange, something she had never seen in a man's eyes before. Permission. His voice dropped low, just for her. You can walk if you want. But if you'd rather leave with me, I'll see to it you're never treated like property again. Mai's breath caught. Her heart thundered in her chest. For the first time that day, she felt a crack of air in the suffocating weight. Slowly, she nodded. Owen turned, and Mai followed him away from the wagon, away from the crowd, away from the family who had sold her for coins. No one stopped them. Not her father, not her brother, not Gideon Finch. Blackwater Gulch watched in silence, unsure if they had just witnessed a rescue or a rebellion. The trail leading out of town wound like a snake into the rolling foothills. Owen walked steady, boots crunching gravel. Behind him, Mai sat astride a stubborn pack mule, gripping the worn saddle with unsure hands. She waited for the change, the harsh word, the grab, the demand. But Owen said nothing. Hours passed. The sound of town faded. Bird song replaced the clamor of hammers and shouting. The grasslands grew wide around them. For the first time in years, Mai was far from her father's shadow, far from the jeering eyes of men who measured her worth in coins. Fear and relief twisted inside her like tangled roots. At midday, Owen stopped by a stream. He knelt, dipped a tin cup, and offered it to her. "Drink," he said simply. She hesitated. He didn't press. She sipped. The water was cold and sharp, cutting through the dust in her throat. He only drank after she finished. When night fell, they reached a small clearing on a stretch of open land. A rough frame of logs stood half-finished. Its roof, a patchwork of canvas and branches. A fire pit, blackened from old flames, lay at the center. This was no Grand Ranch house. It was a promise. Owen looked at her, his face lit by the dying light. "This ain't comfort. Not safety. Not yet. But there's room here for a house. A proper one. You can stay tonight, and tomorrow we start building. Or at first light, I'll take you back." Mai's voice cracked. "Why would you give me that choice?" "Because it's yours," he said. No man had ever spoken to her that way. Not her father, not her brother, not a soul in Blackwater Gulch. She sat in silence by the fire, wrapped in Owen's old coat, too big for her shoulders. He served her beans and jerky before taking his share. And when the stars wheeled above them, Owen carried his bedroll to the lean-to outside. "You can sleep inside," he said. "Canvas leaks some, but it'll hold." "You're not," she stopped herself. Owen gave a short nod. "I'll be out here." And so for the first time in her life, Meiling lay down in the dark and drifted to sleep without fear. But peace on the frontier was fragile, and Blackwater Gulch had long memories. Somewhere in the distance, trouble was already on its way. The days grew longer as summer stretched over the plains. Mai woke each morning to the smell of sagebrush and the call of wild birds. Her hands, once delicate, began to harden with work. She split wood, hauled stones, mixed mud, and learned to steady a mallet without fear. Beside her, Owen Croft worked with quiet precision, showing her with simple gestures how to brace beams, how to fit logs tight, how to seal cracks against the wind. Owen was a man of few words. But his silence was never cruel. He didn't command. He didn't mock. He simply worked, and in his stillness, Mai found space she had never known. At night, they sat near the fire. He always served her first, then himself, and when the stars filled the sky, he carried his bedroll outside, leaving her the safety of the growing house's shelter. One evening, as flames flickered low, Mai finally asked, "Were you always out here on the plains?" Owen shook his head. "No. I was a carpenter. Built barns, porches, coffins. Had a little house near the river." "What happened?" she asked. He stared into the fire, jaw tight. "Took a wife. Her name was Sarah. She had a sweet voice. Loved birds. Lost her and the boy to cholera. After that, I didn't see much reason to hear myself talk anymore." Mai sat quietly, the crackle of fire filling the space between them. Then her own voice came, softer, uncertain. "My father said I was born wrong. Too stubborn, not obedient enough. He said a woman's hands are for sewing, not for books." Owen stirred the coals with a stick but did not interrupt. "I never learned the English letters," she admitted. "Only a handful of words." Owen finally looked at her. "Then we'll fix that." She blinked, not sure she had heard right, but he was already rising, pulling a flat board from his tools. With a stick of charcoal, he wrote her name, Meia slowly, carefully. He showed her each letter. Her fingers trembled as she copied them, her writing uneven, but hers all the same. She stared at the marks for a long time, clutching the board to her chest like it was a treasure. It was the first thing she had ever truly owned with her name upon it. By the third week, the house stood with strong walls and a roof that kept the rain at bay. Mai planted wildflowers near the steps, her hands digging into the earth with something that felt almost like joy. For once, she wasn't a burden. She was building something that might last. But joy does not last long in the West. One afternoon, the sound of hooves broke through the prairie stillness. I froze. 2 riders appeared at the ridge, and her stomach sank. It was her father, Bai, and her brother, Wei. Their faces were twisted with scorn, their eyes sharp with ownership. Bai dismounted, his voice dripping with disdain. "Well, look at this dump. I knew she'd find herself a hovel, but didn't expect it to be in the middle of nowhere." Owen stepped down from the porch, axe in hand, blade resting low but ready. "You're not welcome here." "She's my daughter," Bai barked. "You think you get to say what's what?" "She's not your property," Owen answered, his voice steady. Wei swung off his horse, spat in the dirt, and sneered. "She's a debt. A mouth we fed too long. And now a rich merchant in Helena's offering 10 head of cattle for a wife. We've come to collect." Owen didn't flinch. "If she wants to go with you, she can. I won't stop her." Bai smirked. "You think she's your wife now? You think you get to play house with her?" Owen's eyes didn't waver. "I think she's a person. That's more than you ever treated her as." Inside the house, Mai's legs trembled, her heart hammering. She could stay hidden. She could let Owen stand for her. But deep down, she knew this moment was hers. The door creaked open. Mai stepped outside, her chin lifted, her hand stained with dirt from the flowers she had planted. She looked at her father, then her brother. "I'm not going with you," she said. Bai blinked, stunned. "Excuse me." I said no, her voice carried clear across the clearing. "I'm not for sale." "Not anymore." Wei moved forward, but Owen shifted, the axe in his grip steady. "You heard her. She made her choice." Bai's face twisted with rage. "Ungrateful girl. After all we did for you. You sold me," Mai cut in. Her voice cracked but did not falter. "You didn't raise me. You tolerated me until you could profit." The words hung in the open air. From the trees a few trappers and homesteaders had gathered, watching. Bai noticed them. His bravado cracked. "You'll regret this, girl," he spat. "Maybe," Mai answered, her back straight, her eyes unflinching. "But it'll be my regret." There was a long pause. Then Bai cursed, mounted his horse, and turned away. Wei glared once more at Owen before following. Their figures shrank into the distance, leaving only silence. Mai exhaled, knees weak, but she stayed upright. She had chosen. For the first time in her life, no one could take that from her. The fire crackled as Owen set his axe back on the porch. He did not speak. He didn't need to. The prairie had heard her words, and so had he. The land turned white early that year. Snow clung to the sparse trees, and the stream froze in places where Mai used to kneel for water. Owen hunted each morning, his rifle slung over his shoulder. But winter on the plains was cruel, and game grew scarce. One evening, long after the sun had slipped away, Mai heard the panicked bray of their mule. She rushed outside and saw Owen stumbling up the trail, blood soaking his shirt. His face was pale, jaw clenched. "Owen," she cried, dragging him inside. "It's not deep," he grunted. "Elk caught me with an antler. Just a graze, but the blood told another story." Mai pressed rags to the wound, her hands shaking, her breath quick and uneven. For days, Owen could hardly move. He leaned on a carved stick just to make it from the bed to the fire. Mai became the strength of the home. She split wood until blisters tore her palms. She hauled water from the stream, mended clothes, kept the fire alive. She cleaned his wound and sat by him at night, reading from the handful of words Owen had taught her. The settlers whispered that she would die out there with him, but Mai did not leave. One night, as wind howled outside, she stitched a bandage with trembling fingers. Owen studied her face, pale with exhaustion but unbroken. "You're stronger than this whole country," he murmured. She blinked, tears welling. "Why?" "I've seen storms split trees in half, but not you." Her head dropped, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. For the first time in her life, someone had called her strong. Owen reached out, his hand closing gently over hers. The fire burned steady between them, warming more than just the room. By spring, Owen could walk again. The snow melted, streams ran full, and green buds spread across the hills. The house stood solid, flowers blooming near the steps Mai had planted the summer before. One afternoon, 3 riders came, prospectors from the south. Their leader, Marcus, tipped his hat and offered Mai a folded paper. "We've got a claim down in town. Need someone who can read receipts and keep ledgers. Pays fair, roof over your head. You be the first woman hired for brains, not just bedwarming." Mai's chest tightened. A real job. A chance to stand on her own, free from debt, free from dependence. That night, she sat by the fire, staring at the offer. Owen carved cedar in silence. At last, he set down the wood and placed something beside her, a small, hand-carved map. "If you want to go," he said, "this will take you down. Easiest trail after snowmelt." Mai stared. "And if I don't want to go?" "Keep it anyway. So you'll always know the way back." "Owen, aren't you going to stop me? Say something." His eyes softened. "You're not mine to keep. That's the point." 2 mornings later, Mai stood at the trail as the wagon rattled closer. Marcus waved. "You ready, miss?" She clutched the carved map in one hand, the offer in the other. Her heart thundered. Then she shook her head. "No." Marcus frowned. "You sure?" "I already live where I want to be," she said firmly. She turned back, walked up the slope, and found Owen waiting on the porch. She pressed the map into his palm and smiled. "Turns out I don't need it. I'm already home." Owen didn't smile back. He only nodded, but his eyes said more than words ever could. That spring, the house became more than shelter. Mai laid chalk and slate on a long wooden table Owen had built, and children from the valley came, carrying eggs and corn as payment for lessons. Mothers lingered at the door, listening as their little ones spelled their names for the first time. Mai's voice filled the room, teaching letters once denied to her. And when she looked up, she often found Owen watching from the porch, carving stools for the children, his quiet pride shining through the lines of his weathered face. On a Sunday morning, beneath the widest cottonwood tree, the valley folk gathered. Mai wore a white dress stitched from flower sacks, wildflowers braided into her hair. Owen stood beside her in a clean shirt, beard trimmed neat. The children scattered petals at her feet, and a broken fiddle played a thin but sweet tune. Mai took his hands, her voice steady. "I used to believe I was nothing, that my worth came only from what others could take from me. But this man built me more than a house. He gave me a place to stand, a name to carry. A life of my own choosing." Owen's voice cracked as he answered, "I've built many things in my life, barns, coffins, porches. But nothing was ever finished until her. Today, I call her my wife. Not because she's mine, but because she made this place a home." The crowd cheered, children clapped, and when Owen slipped the hand-carved wooden ring onto Mai's finger, the prairie itself seemed to still in reverence. That night, the house glowed with firelight. Children's practice letters lay on the long table. Chickens clucked softly under the porch. Mai wrote lesson plans by candlelight while Owen carved shelves for their growing home. Outside, the stars burned over the plains. Inside, Mai smiled through tears. After a lifetime of being called useless, she was finally something more. Wife, teacher, builder. And she was home.